Alright, so we'll start this video by first installing Node.js. Let's go to the official website of Node.js. Just type Node.js and then visit the first website. We have a couple of configuration over here, the NVM, which is the tool to install Node.js, and then a list of multiple Node.js versions. Right, so the first thing that we are going to do to install NVM, we need brew. So brew is another tool that is already installed in the Mac OS. You can just type brew -v to check the version, and then type brew installed NVM to install NVM. We just need to wait a couple of seconds here, and then the NVM will be installed. Now you can type NVM -v to check the version of the NVM. Now the next step is to install the particular version of the Node.js. So the recommended version for our application is anything beyond 18. So for this project I have chosen 18.20.4. So I can just type nvm installed and then the particular version, which is 18.20.4. Now press enter, and now you have to wait here for a couple of seconds, and the nvm will install all the packages and libraries for the Node.js. After that, you can type nvm ls and will list down all the installed versions of the Node.js. Now keep in mind that if you have multiple versions, then you have to make the 18 as a default version. So what you can do, you can type another command. You can just open up the terminal, right? So the current version for me, the default version of Node.js is 19, so I have to change it to 18. So you can type nvm alias default and then the 18.20.4, the version that I want to make default. You can see that the version is highlighted in the green. Now you can close the terminal and reopen it again. Now type nvm ls again. Now this time the 18.20.4 is highlighted in green, and this means that the default version has been changed to 18. You can type node -v to just make sure that the version has been changed. Then you can type node just to make sure that the node environment is working correctly. You can type or write any code snippet, any valid JavaScript code, just to make sure that the Node.js environment is working fine. In this part of the video, we'll install Git and we'll use Git to communicate with the GitHub or any other version control system. So first we need to download the Git. So you can just type Git on the Google and it will open up the official website. Now the one that we'll be using is using brew. So we'll use the brew again to install the Git. The command is very simple. You can just open up the terminal and type brew install and then Git and press enter. Now wait a couple of seconds over here, and then the brew will install the Git for you. Now we are done over here. You can clear the screen and type git -v to check the version. So we are getting version 2.39, which means that Git has been installed successfully. The next step is for us to configure the SSH key, which we will use as a token to communicate with the GitHub. Now I have opened an article over here, but you can just go to the Google and type git SSH configuration, and it will give you that particular article. This is the link. You can just open up, and then on the left side select generate new SSH key. Now this is the step where we'll actually generate the SSH key for us to communicate with the GitHub. Now you can just follow up the video and copy paste the commands. So the first command is to generate the SSH key. Now in the email section you can type any email over here. It doesn't really matter, but just for safety or for tracking, make sure that you write the correct email. And then the next step is that you have to give the path where you want to generate the SSH key. So just press enter because we want to use the default path. The second one is enter any password over here. This is important, and make sure that you remember this password. So just type any password that you can remember. Just reconfirm the password and type again and press enter. Now the SSH key has been generated successfully. Now let's move forward. The next step is we have already done these two steps, generating the key and selecting the path. And we need this passphrase to secure the key. The second thing is adding this SSH key to the agent. So our agent has started successfully on a particular PID. The next thing is to create the configuration file. Now if we do not have a configuration file, we have to create one. But let's see, we can see it. So just change the directory to the SSH, and then we can see that we do not have any configuration file, right? So we have to create that particular configuration file for. Let's go to the article again, and we have the command over here. You can just use this command. If you are already in the SSH folder, you do not have to type .ssh. You can just type config and it will create an empty file for you. Now the next step is to copy the configuration to that file. Just copy the configuration and then go back, and now you have to open. So for to open the file, you can use vim. If you do not have vim, you can install it. Just google it and you will know how to do it. Just press I to make the file editable, and then control V to paste it. Just make sure that the key ID or the key name is actually same, so because it will conflict, or the configuration will be invalid. Once you're done, you can press escape to come out of the editable zone, and then type colon W key, which means that whatever I have written, just uh, persist it. Press I to make the file editable, so we can change it and modify the configuration. And I'm also writing all the commands and all the instructions on the notepad over here, so you can follow them as well, and then type the particular command to escape and write the data to the hard disk, right? We can just check again by typing vim config, and you can see that we have the configuration inside the configuration file. Now let's go back and scroll down and see what is the next step. We have done this part. Now the next step is going to be add this new key in the GitHub, right? So you can just select the add a new SSH key from the left menu. Scroll down a little bit, and we need to copy that key to our clipboard. So you can copy this command, right? Since we are already in the SSH folder, we do not need to type .ssh. We can just remove it, right? And this will copy the key to your clipboard. Or what you can do, if you are in the root folder, then you just need to copy the whole command and paste it, and there's nothing to do with that. No modification in the command, right? Just press enter, and your public key or the key SSH key has been copied to your clipboard. Now the next step is we need to go to our GitHub profile, right? In the profile, select settings, and then the next step is we need to add the SSH key to the GitHub. So on the left menu we have SSH and GPG key, sorry, right? So we can just click on new SSH key and give any title over here. Just make sure that you give a meaningful title, and then any title over here, Enatega access key. Now since we are using it to authenticate, we have to select authentication key from the key tab drop down, and the next step is going to be to paste the SSH key. You can just come here and paste the key, and then click on add. Now here you have to type the password of your GitHub account. You can just type and then continue and confirm, and that particular key will be added to your GitHub account. Just click on confirm, and you're done. Now your access key has been added. Now you can easily access your GitHub from your local. Now let's start by cloning a project. So you can clone the Enatega Backend API. Now, so this is actually the proprietary project. So you will be granted access. Once you have the access to it, you can just go to the link and follow the instructions to clone the project. Now use the SSH because we have configured the SSH. You can copy the link and then type git clone and that paste the link and press enter, and this will actually clone the whole project for you, and then you can actually work with that. It's cloning and downloading all the required files. It may ask you to provide the password, and you have to type the password that you selected when we were generating the SSH key, I mean the passphrase, and that is why I told you to keep that password safe somewhere, right? Since I've already done it multiple times, it did not ask me it did not ask for the password, but in your case it may ask, so just make sure that you keep that password safe. Now the project has been cloned. Now what we can do, we can clear the screen and type ls to see the project and code dot to open up the project in VS Code. Now Backend API project has been opened in the VS Code. We have all the files over here. Now the next step, let's see what we have. The next step, we have to create an environment variable, an environment file to keep our environments over there. You can just create a new file using the tool above and then create .env file. Now scroll down a little bit and then we have some of the uh, environment variables. Just copy that and paste it over here. And we have multiple environment variable that we need to create somehow, and we'll take care of them in the next couple of videos. But we have the connection string for the database, we have like the server URL, the backend URL, and then the dashboard URL and the web URL, and we'll talk about these different environment variables when we generate those keys. In this video, we'll create a MongoDB database for our backend API. First, we'll create the MongoDB database, and then once we receive the connection string, we'll copy and paste it over here in the environment variable connection string. Now let's open up the Google and type MongoDB. Open up the official website of MongoDB Atlas database. Just wait here. Click on sign in. You have multiple ways to sign in, but we'll be using Google to sign into this account. Select any email. After you're logged in, you will see this view on your screen. So start by first granting some network permissions, and then we'll move to grant some create a database user and then grant that user some database permissions. So we'll go to the network access, and then you can edit the first configuration as well, or you can create new one as well, right? It depends on you, whatever seems convenient to you. You can just add a new IP address, but what I will do, I'll just edit the one already created. It is recommended that you type the IP address of the backend, but since we are actually doing it for testing purpose, you can just leave it 0.0.0, which means that any IP address can access the database. Yes, 0.0.0, and then 0 port means that any IP address and any application with using any port can access the database. For production application, this is not recommended, but since we are testing, we can just leave it like that. And then let's go to the database access. Here we need to create a user. You can just delete all the users if then they're not required. You can just create add, and then we will be using password as a method of authentication. Just type any name here, Enatega test. User is our username, and then the password can be anything that is simple to remember, or you can auto generate your secure password. Just make sure that you remember the username and password, because we will be using the username and password to connect to the MongoDB database. Another important thing that you are not supposed to miss is assign a role to the user. So you can just come to the built-in role drop-down and assign it the required role. Since I'm an admin, so I'll assign it an admin role. Now all the resources have been assigned, all the configuration. Now let's go to the database section. Now here we have a cluster over here that is a default cluster. You can click on connect, come to the MongoDB for VS Code, and this is the configuration that we need to follow to connect to the MongoDB. Or you can create a new cluster for yourself, and this will not be free. The default cluster is free, but if you want to create another cluster, you have to pay for it. You can select the region you want to create in, the provider, and then different specs for the cluster. And now it will ask for the payment and how you will be charged. Now we are not required to do it, we'll just use the free cluster for our testing. This will be charged $0.012 per hour. You can see we have different tiers over here. So you can just cancel it and go back to the main screen. And here we'll just, we do not need to create the cluster. So the name of the cluster is cluster 0, and we will be using it to create different databases and collections in it. New clusters will be charged. So let's go with the default one. So I'll click on the browse collections. There are multiple ways to route to this path, but you can just now you can see that we have an option to create database. You can just click create the new one, or maybe drop the old one so you can create it. So you can recreate it. Now create database. Now you can see that the one mistake that I did was that my username and my database name are same. So don't get confused with it. You can change it. You can name anything you want your database. You can see that my username for the account was Enatega test user, and I also set the name of the database to Enatega test user, right? You can tap the default collection, which is user, and then click create, and then this will create a database for you with the name Enatega test user and a default table or collection named user. Now let's go back to the overview or the home page. Now here we need to connect to this database. So you can click on the connect and select MongoDB for VS Code. And we need to follow this. Now we have a default connection string. We will copy it. And this is the database that will be connecting to Enatega-test-user. You can see that the Enatega test user is both our username and database, and this was a mistake, but you are more than welcome to change your database name. Now let's follow the instructions and connect to the database. Alright, so just copy and paste the default connection string, and now you have to just change the password. Now we already saved the password in the notepad. You can just copy the password and paste it in the connection string. Make sure to remove the brackets. The next step is to type the database name. Now, as I mentioned earlier, that we set the database name as our username, so don't get confused with that. You can change it when you're creating the database, when you're creating the database, or you can delete this one and create a new one. And now we just need to add one last thing to the connection string. And now we're done. Now this is a complete and valid connection string. Now just make sure that you have given proper network access permissions and database permissions for this uh, connection string to work. Now I have a tool, a software known as MongoDB Compass. This is a local graphical user interface that you can use to connect it. Just paste your connection string over here and click on connect, and this will connect your software with the database. Now you can see that we have successfully connected to the cluster, and the left side we have all the databases, and the our database that we created earlier was Enatega test user, and you have there in the list. You can just expand it, and we can see that we have a user table over here. You can add and insert any JSON data over here. We have successfully connected to the MongoDB database, and we also pasted the connection string in the environment variable. In this video, we'll set up the Firebase service account for our backend API, and we'll create a service account using Firebase. So let's go to the Firebase, type Firebase in the Google, and search the official website of firebase.google.com. Go to the console. Now here you need to create a Firebase project. Type any name you want. Continue. Click create project, and this will create a new project for your Firebase. Just wait a couple of seconds over here. Click on continue. Now our Firebase project has been created successfully. Now the next step is click on the settings, project settings, go to the service accounts. After that, select Node.js. Since we are working with the Node.js, generate new private key. We need to make sure that this key is confidential, and we need to keep it secret. Now we have a brand new file. Just open up the file. The contents of the file is also sensitive, so just make sure that it's hidden from the public. Just copy the contents of the file, open up your Enatega API, and you can see that you have a service account key.json file. Just paste the content over here. Just make sure that you do not push this content to the public repository. Now let's start by running the backend. First, we'll start with the normal start, and then we'll move to the Docker. So we have everything over here: the connection string and the service account details as well. And just make sure that the private IP address is correct. And if the private IP address of your system changes, you must update the server URL as well. So this is the updated private IP address of my system. Clear the screen. And the next step is going to be installing all the dependencies. So you can type npm install, or for short you can say npm space I. This will install all the packages of your Node.js app. Open up your VS Code, and in the terminal you can type npm I, and this command will install all the dependencies. You can see that the dependencies have been installed successfully. Now go to the package.json and check out the start command. Now type npm run start, and this will start your server. You can see that the server ready at particular address, and then the subscription server is also ready at a particular address. If we click on it, you can see that we have the GraphQL playground in the browser. These two URLs are only required when you deploy your front-end applications. Once you deploy them, you have to update the URLs in the env of your backend. So before moving forward, let's go back to the API and open up the .env file, right? And then I have added 3 different environment variables over here regarding Redis. Since we are using Redis in our application to create notification queues, right? So we need Redis credentials to connect with the Redis. So just keep this in mind and add these 3 variables. The host, the password, and the port number. So if your host number is if the Redis host is different from mine, you can change it to that one. If you have set up a password to the Redis, you can set it over here. And then if the Redis is running in a different port than 6379, which is the default one, then you can change it over here. Okay, now let's talk about how you're going to retrieve these 3 credentials of the Redis. In the next part, when we talk about the Docker compose, and we'll talk about the setup of the Docker, we will actually use this compose files. In this file you can see that we have the Redis configuration. Now here you can actually configure your Redis and assign different host, password, container name, and some other configurations like the space that the Redis the memory the Redis must consume, the maximum limit, and a lot of other configuration that you can do. You're more than welcome to check out the documentation. So here we can see that the image name is Redis. So since we do not have any custom name for the Redis container, so this Redis will actually be our host. And we can see that the port is actually 6379, which is the default port. But if you map a different port, then you have to use a different port, obviously. And we do not have a password here, so we can set it null. So we can say that the image name is Redis, so this is going to be your host. If you have assigned a custom container name to the Redis, then you will have to use that as your Redis host. So we can say that the Redis is our host name, and the port is going to be 6379, which is the default one. So we can just come back to the .env, and we can see that we have put the same configuration over here. So the name of the container is going to be the Redis, and the and the port name is host. So once you in the next part, once we deploy our Redis container and the backend, you will have a flow something like this. You will have two different containers like this. So this is what the Redis. So once you put those credentials in your application, you will be able, your application server one, which is the backend, will be able to access the Redis. Now let's move to try out the Docker way. So for that, we first need to install Docker. So let's type Docker desktop. I'll be using Docker desktop client. Now, depending upon the processor chip, you'll install that particular version. Since I'm using Apple Silicon, I'll be downloading the Apple version. Just download it and then install it. And then search for the Docker client and open up the application. The Docker is actually starting, but I somehow got confused and started it again. You can see that on the top bar, we have Docker starting. So once it started, you can see that you'll see this kind of view. If you have any images, just delete them all, or any containers running, just delete them. First delete the containers, and once you delete them, just go to the images tab and delete all the images that you are not using. Then you will have this empty view. Now close the server, and then we'll be using the Docker file and the Docker compose. You can see that we have compose.yaml file. This has all the configuration for the Docker compose. The context means the Docker file. So context dot means the Docker file in the current directory. So you could type command docker compose up, and this will find that particular Docker file and create an image. Since we have Redis in our configuration file as well, this is going to pull the Redis image and create the container, and then move forward with our own Docker file to create the backend. Now currently it's installing all the dependencies in our Node.js app. Just wait a couple of seconds and this will deploy our container. Now it's exporting all the layers. You can see that we have the logs, and now our server is actually live on a particular address. So localhost colon 8001 as a port. You can see that the GraphQL playground is accessible. This means that the container was deployed successfully and we can actually work with our backend. In this video, we'll try to deploy our backend API on Railway. So we have already set up and see everything. We have seen everything how the backend actually works in the local environment. Now this time I'll use Railway app as our deployment application, and we'll use Railway to deploy our backend. So just click on the official link and go to the railway.app. First you need to log in. Just make sure that you log in and create a new project. Since we want to deploy our application from the GitHub, we'll select GitHub, and after that you have to select the particular repository that you want to deploy. Since we want to deploy the backend API, we will select the backend API. If the API is or the repository is not visible there, just make sure that you have access to that particular repository or you're logged into the correct GitHub account. Just scroll down and select your repository. Once logged in, you will see all of the repositories that your account has access to. This is the Enatega Multivendor API. You will select it. we need to deploy a new one. So I'll select, I can add variables, or you can just say deploy now. But since we need deploy, we need to create variables, so that's why selecting variables is a good option. Just click on the raw editor, and it's just like we did in the local. Just go to the .env file and select all of these environment variables and paste them over here. We do not have these two URLs right now, so you can just remove them. The server URL, we don't need them, and the connection string is the most important one. After that, you can click on update variables and you're done. If you want to update the environment variables, you can do them, add them in the future as well. Now go to the settings. You can see that the source repo is selected as the multi-vendor API. You can select the branch. Let's select the correct branch to deploy our application. If you're deploying a development build, you have to select a branch that is for development, and for staging you have to select a staging branch, and for production you have to select the branch for the production. Now for in my case, this is main Enatega deployment. Let's create a new domain so that we can access the API. The port number should be 8001. This is what we are using, and this is the backend URL that we'll use on the front end side as well. Let's add a build command over here, which is by default npm run build. We do not need them, need these commands right now because Express doesn't need them. We can just have a default command, which is node index. But we need a start command. By default it's npm run start, but we must type it over here. So you can just type npm run start, or if you have changed the command in the package.json, you have to change over here as well. We need only one replica. You can create multiple replicas as well for safety. You can type the any URL over here that can be used to check whether the server is up or not, like any root path, for example, or maybe any gate API that you have developed that can be used by the server to check whether the server is actually working fine or not, because that API, if successful, will return 200 status code. But we do not need to do it for now. You can do it if you want to do it. You can delete the whole service as well, but we are not going to do that. So there are 9 changes. If we go to the Google, this is not accessible right now because we still have some changes and we need to deploy it. So just click on enter deploy, just click on deploy, and this will apply all the 9 changes to the deployment. Just wait a couple of seconds and this will deploy your application. Deployment in progress. Now it's publishing the image. You can click on the view logs to see what's happening in the real time. The deployment has been completed. You can see that we are getting deployment successful status. All right, so we can see that the backend API has been deployed successfully. Now the next important thing that we need to do is we need to create another app right next to the backend API. So for that I can just click on the cross button and then go to the create. This time I need a database, just like we did in the local setup that we created a Redis. Since the Redis was part of the Docker Compose file, so once you build up the Docker Compose file, it will automatically generate both the backend container and also the Redis. And then we added those three environment variables in the dot environment. So we have to create a database over here as well, and then copy those environment variables in our backend env. So just let's click on the add Redis, and this will actually create a Redis app over here. Just wait a couple of seconds. Alright, so Redis has also been deployed. Now we have the railway is actually applying 15 changes. So just click on the Redis and then go to the variables. You can see that we have a lot of environment variables that are inside the Redis, right? The only thing that matters or that are important to us are the ones that are highlighted, which is the Redis host, the Redis password, and Redis post. So let's see them one by one. So let me just copy them one by one and open up the notepad. Right, let's open up a new one, and this would be the Redis information, and this is going to be our host, right? And then let's go back again and then copy the password, go back, save the password as well, right? And then go back again, and this time we'll copy the port, save this as well in your notepad. This is going to be port, right? Now let's go back again to the railway and close the Redis app. Now currently the Redis is running, right? Let's open up the backend API and go to the variables, and this time we'll do the same thing. We have to add Redis over here, right? So I can just come down over here and open up my backend and copy these three environment variables, go back to the railway app and paste it over here, right? Now these the port and the host was for specifically for the local, but we can see that it's different for the deployed Redis. So we can just copy them one by one. Let's start with the host, right? This time we have a password as well, so you can just copy the whole password and then go back and paste it in the password environment variable. And this time in the local the port that the Redis was actually reusing was 63799, but on the railway it's different. So I can just copy, I think it's different, I think it's the same, right? So it's the same, right? So we don't need to change the port, but in case if it's different, then you just update it. Now once you're done with that, you can just update the variables. Now we can see that once we deploy these changes, the backend API will be able to connect with the Redis. So just click on deploy and enter and close it. Now it's currently updating those changes. Okay, we got an error over here. Let's go back to the logs and see what is happening. The build logs. Okay, I don't think so that was a build error. I think the application has been deployed successfully, right? But let's say if we can find a way to redeploy it. Let's say we have the source, then the network, or maybe let's close it again and then go to the backend API, go to the settings. Okay, so currently I'm unable to find the repo. Okay, all right, let's deploy it again. I disconnected the GitHub and then connected it again. So it's applying the changes, it's initializing the build again. All right, now it's deploying. So just wait a couple of seconds and this will deploy your application. Okay, so we can see that the application has been redeployed with the updated environment variables. Now we can just go to the settings and let's go down and find the public URL. Okay, where is the public URL? It should be somewhere up here. And this is the public URL. Just copy the public URL and paste it in the browser. If we receive any get, this means that the API is up and running. We can just go to the graphical as well just to make sure that the playground is also up and live. So we can see that the backend has been deployed successfully with the updated Redis credentials. The next step is to clone the project. So I'll go to the Ninja's Code official repository and find food delivery multivendor. Here we have all the directories for admin, for app, for restaurant, for provider, and for the web. Just clone it using SSH configuration. Just type git clone and space your repository, and this will clone a new repository in your local system. Just wait a couple of seconds and this will download all the files from the GitHub. The project has been cloned. You can change the directory. You can see that all of the subdirectories are already present. Just open up the project in the VS Code and go to the multi-vendor admin directory. Go to the source folder, open up the configuration and then constant.js. This is where we need to update the backend URL. You can use the local URL and as well as the deployed backend URL. Since the database is same, we can use any of them. So our backend is running fine. Now let's update the backend URL on the admin portal. Just comment the production URL and uncomment the local URLs. Just make sure that you update the private IP address of your system. So let's go to the Google console and create a new project. Write any name you want. Click create. Just make sure the name is available. The project creation is actually in progress. Just make sure that the project is selected from the drop down. Now next step, go to the enatega.com to check out the documentation and click on Google Maps API key. Since multiple keys are involved in this step, and I have to open up the documentation. Let's go back to the console. Click on API and services. Go to the library. Search for Geo Encoding API. Click on the card and click enable. You can do this step one by one, but Google gives us a more convenient way to assign multiple APIs that are connected. So in case of Google APIs, there are multiple APIs or services that are required. So this is the API key. Just make sure that you save this key somewhere in your file. Just copy it and paste it in your notepad. I'll just save it in the browser because there's too much mess over there. Click on go to Google Maps. This is where you can restrict your API key, but I don't want to do it right now. Go to enable APIs. This is actually not a good approach to enable all the APIs, but since we're testing, we need to do it. Go back to API and services. Just make sure all the APIs are enabled. We'll select one by one and confirm it. So start by Maps JavaScript API. You can see it's enabled. And go for the places. Just keep doing it for all the APIs in the documentation. Now let's do it for Maps Elevation API. Go back to the console and search for the API key. It is also enabled. Go back again and try it for Maps Static API. Search for it. It is also enabled. Now let's try for the geolocation API. Type geolocation API, click on geolocation API, search, and we can see that this API is also enabled. Now let's do it for distance metrics API. This is also enabled. Let's do it for Maps SDK for Android. We can see that this is also enabled. Now last, which is the Maps SDK for iOS. And this is also enabled. So we can see that all of the required libraries and services are enabled. We can go back to the API and services. Now let's go back to the admin portal and update the Google Maps API key. We will comment the configuration.google app key because we have not yet updated the configuration in the admin portal. So we just hard code it for the time being. We created this key in the previous part. So you can just use the same key and hard code in the constant.js. Just copy the key and comment this part and paste your Google Maps API key. Once you're done, you can open up the terminal and make sure you are in the right directory, in the admin directory. Now type npm I to install all the dependencies. This is an important step. Now let's restart the front-end admin portal as well. Now let's close the tab. Now let's check out the link and click on continue. Let's inspect as well in case we face any other issue. Refresh the page, you can see that the GraphQL API called successfully. We got the response. Currently we do not have anything, but we can click on the login and see that we have actually logged into our system. Now the next important step is to add all these configurations. Now we already are done with the Google API part, so you can just copy this key, the one we hot coded in our constant.js, go back to the configuration and paste it over here and click on save. Now we can inspect, refresh and go to the network tab to check for the configuration. Even I can see that we have all the configuration, but all of them are null except the Google API that we actually added in our configuration. So in this video we'll talk about Node Mailer, which is a Node.js module, and we use this module to send emails to the clients. So in this video we'll talk about doing some configuration on the Google account. So just stay with me, and in the next part we'll configure the Node Mailer. So in this video we'll create an app password for our Node Mailer. So we'll go to the Google and click on Manage Accounts. Now go to the Security and make sure that the two-factor authentication is actually enabled. Come down and click on the phone number and add your phone number over here. Select the country and type valid phone number. Click on next, and this will send a code to your phone. Just type the code over here. And click on verify. This will turn on the two-factor authentication on your account. After that, you can go back. You can see the status of the two-step verification. Just refresh the page to make sure that everything is fine. Now go to the search and type app passwords. Select the app passwords. Set any name to your application. I'll select Enatega test. Just keep track and save these information in any notepad. So this is the app name and this is your password. Just save both the name and the password. And we'll add these two configurations, these configurations to our admin dashboard. Sorry, admin portal. Now let's open the admin portal and go to the configuration. We have Node Mailer email portion. We have three things: the app name that we selected, the password, and the email that we used to log in. So the app name is Enatega-test. The password is this one. Just copy it and paste it in your configuration. For the email, you have to select the email of the account that you were logged in. In my case, it was Gmail address. You can just save it and this configuration has been updated. You can just go back and refresh the page and you can see that the inputs are still populated. So in this video we'll talk about Stripe. So Stripe is a well-known online payment system which allows users to pay for their order either using their credit card or debit card. So just stay with me, and then in the next part we'll try to configure Stripe for our Enatega application. In this part we'll try to set up the Stripe for the payment system. If you do not have any account, just click on create account, insert all the important details including your email. Since I'm testing it, I'm using Mailinator as our testing email, and then type any name, select the country of your choice, and then add any password, or you can suggest a strong password. Just click on create account, and this will create a Stripe account for you. Verify your email. You should receive an email on your email address. Just click on the link, and your account has been verified. Now this is actually in test mode, but for protection you must use a business profile. You can see that you have an option on the top bar which says complete profile. This is for the business profile. Now go to the search and select webhooks. But before that, let's create an API key. Now Stripe gives you some default keys. We can use them as well. And let's update the Enatega configuration. We can go to the Stripe and paste our public key and the secret as well. Click on reveal secret key, copy the key and paste it in your configuration, and click on save. Our next step will be to create a webhook for our Stripe account. The webhook URL must be the customer web portal URL. Now currently we have not deployed it, but just keep in mind that when we deployed that URL, you have to update the Stripe webhook URL. So just go to the Stripe dashboard and to the webhooks, or if you are in the root page, you can just go to the developers, click on the webhooks, click on add an endpoint. Now here you need to paste the front-end URL of your customer web portal. Now here we need to add some events. So the first event is going to be event account updated. The second one is going to be checkout session completed. And then you can click on add events. Now these two events have been added. Now click on add endpoint, and this will add this endpoint as a webhook. You can go back to the webhooks and add any other endpoints as well. If you click on the link, you can see that you have the prompt waiting for the events. But before that, click on signing secret. Now this is the secret that we need. This is an important secret. Copy the secret and go to the railway app where you actually deployed your backend API. Go to the dashboard and now select your project. Go to the variables, edit the variable. Now in the Stripe webhook endpoint secret, you have to paste this secret. Update the variables. We have multiple envs as well that are required. Just make sure that you add the names, and then we'll add them in the future if required. But most of the environment variables are fetched from the configuration API. You can see that we have both. We have updated the dashboard URL and the web URL, and this URL will be updated when once you deploy your admin portal and your customer web portal. Just come back here to the environment variables and update both the URLs. The dashboard URL is the admin portal, and the web URL is actually the customer web portal. Just update the video variables and click on deploy, and this will deploy a new build with the updated changes. The backend API has been deployed successfully with the latest changes. So in this video, we'll talk about PayPal. PayPal is another online payment system just like Stripe. It also allows users to pay for their orders or for their food or anything, either using their credit card or debit card. So just stay with me, and in the next part, we'll try to configure PayPal for our application. Now the next step is going to create a PayPal account so we can update the PayPal configuration in the admin portal. First, we need to go to the official website of PayPal. Let's go to PayPal, and then we need to go to the developers, but we can still go to that part from the home as well. If you do not have any account registered, since I have account, I'll just log in directly. You can sign up a new account if you do not have any old account of PayPal. It will ask for like basic details like email, password, and other basic information. Just insert those information, and then you're good to go. Now, PayPal is another payment method, just like Stripe, that we will use in our mobile applications to pay for the orders. Now, since I'm testing, I'll just use the personal account, but for the production, it is recommended. The business account is recommended. Just make sure that you sign up for the business account. Enatega is actually not a personal project. It is a project where different clients need to pay you, and this is like a two-way process. So it's recommended to have like a business account, but it depends on you. So just log in to the account. Now, since this is a personal account, this account will have limited features, but just cancel it and you can proceed. And we will be working in the sandbox environment. As I said, this is the testing environment. This is the sandbox environment. You have to upgrade to get access to business features. Now click on the apps and credentials. And here you have the default application. I'll click on create app, just type the name. Since I got a warning for limited features, the creation might fail, but in your case, if you have some quota or if you're using business account, this will work fine. Just select the merchant because I will receive payments as a seller, and then click on create. I am using a limited account, so my creation might fail. But once the creation is successful, you will have an application like this, and this is the default apps. I'll just use it for the time being for the testing purpose. So you have two things, the client ID and the client secret. Just copy the client ID and paste it over here, and for the client secret you can just copy the secret and go back to the configuration and paste it over here and click on save. This will update your configuration in the database. So in this video, we'll talk about Twillio. Twillio is another online platform that provides multiple services like sending SMS messages, receiving SMS messages, or calling someone or receiving calls from someone. We have integrated Twillio in our application and we use it to send SMS to our clients. So just stay with me, and in the next part, we'll try to configure Twillio so we can send messages to our clients. In this video, we'll set up the Twillio account. Just sign up a new Twillio account if you do not have one. These are some very basic details, or you can sign up using Google as well. Since I have an account, I'll just click on the login, type in my email address, and type my password. Click on continue, and this will log me into the console of Twilio. I have $15 as a trial. You can see that the Twilio gives me default credentials, the SID and the auth token. So we have created the free account. Now in order to get the premium one, just click on the start building. Just click on the next. Here we have to configure something. Just leave it like this. Will be using the default configuration. Now this is where you have to enter the payment details. Once you add the details, you will get the premium account. Just click on save and close. Right, once you're done with that, you will have multiple accounts, so you can just click on view all accounts. So this is my first account, which is like the paid one. So once you enter all the details, you will get an account like this one. Now you may get a free phone number, but if you don't get, you will have to buy one. So now you have the same credentials, the SID token and the phone number, which is provided to us. Click on the start building again, and you'll get the same view again if you want to create another account. And then click on explore products, and you will have multiple features over here. On the left side, you have different options that you can check out. The only thing that is important to us is the messaging feature, so just click on it, and you have a small dashboard over here. On the left side, you have a try out option. You can also try out your SMS feature, or if you have any other feature like calling or MMS. On the right side, you can see the phone numbers. Just click on it, and this is where you can buy a new phone number for yourself. You have different filters on the top. You can select the country, uh, Yeah, on the right side, just first click on a buy a number, and then you have the view. Now this is where you can select the country, the capabilities you want to be included in the phone number. You can also see the grid, where you have all the phone numbers and the monthly fee. Just click on the buy, and then once you buy it, you will see that phone number in your credentials right below the Twillio token here on this side. Now once we're done with that, we have to go back to the admin portal and update the configuration, and also update the env in the railway app deployment. So I have opened up the admin portal and I'm in the configuration section. You can see I have the Twilio section over here, which is empty. So let's just go back to the notepad where I've saved all the credentials. Just copy one by one. These are the W ones, but you have to use the original ones for production. Let's go back and paste the Twilio account SID. Let's go back again and copy the token and paste it in the auth token, and we will do the same thing for the phone number, and click on save. Once you save, now the Twilio configuration has been updated. At this time we'll update the environment variables of our backend app. So let's click on the app and go to the variables, click on the raw editor, and here we have to update the Twilio credentials. So let's go back to the notepad and copy these SIDs token in one by one. So let's copy the SID first, uh, and then paste it here. Let's copy the token as well and paste it here, and then the last one is going to be our phone number. So let's paste the phone number as well. Let's click on update. Now you can see that we have some changes over here, 3 changes. So just click on deploy, and then your changes will be pushed to the backend deployment. Just wait a couple of seconds and then you're done. Now it's initializing. You can close it and then click it back. There you can see that you can click on the view logs to see how the build is actually proceeding. So in this video, we'll talk about Sentry. Sentry is another online platform that gives us multiple features like tracking the performance of application or tracking any errors. So as far as the errors are concerned, so whenever the customers are using your application and the application crashes or there is some problem with the app, the Sentry will be notified. So the developers can just go back to the Sentry dashboard and track the errors. So just stay with me, and in the next part, we'll try to configure Sentry for both our mobile apps and our web applications. So in this video, we'll set up the Sentry account. So you can just go to the Sentry URL and log into the Sentry, or you can use Google or GitHub or any other, or you can also use Azure DevOps to log into the Sentry. Now here we need to create different projects. So just click on the project and then create project. And we need two or three types of projects. The first one is going to be Node.js and the React Native. And then you have the frequency for the alerts. You can modify them, or if you think the default ones are correct, then you're good to go. You can select the backend. Since we're using the Express, we can select the Express from here. Configure the SDK, and this will create the Sentry Express project for your backend. Now you have the instruction to set up the Sentry in your applications. Now we have already set up everything. The only thing that we need to update over there is the DSN URL. So just copy the URL and update it in your Sentry configuration in your application. And this is how you use Sentry. Now let's go back. You can see that you have your project is here. Now let's go back and create another project, and this time we'll create a React Native project for our mobile applications, or if you want to do it for the front-end apps, you can create a React project as well. The project creation flow is same for all three frameworks, including React Native, React, or Node.js. Just create the project and copy the URL and update your application. You can see that our React Native QK is part of the projects. Now go back again to create another project. This time I'll select React for our web applications, including the web portal and the admin web portal and the customer web portal. We've got a new DSN as well. So we created all three projects for our React.js app, web and admin, React Native project for mobile apps, and Node.js app for our backend API. Now let's configure our admin dashboard, admin portal, sorry. So go to the configuration and then go to the Sentry configuration. We have all the URLs and we can actually update the configuration. So let's copy and paste them one by one. This is for the web and admin. So just copy in the dashboard. This is for the customer, and web is for the admin. For the app, we'll use the Node.js Sentry key. Go back to the configuration and paste it in the API Sentry URL. And for the rest of the three, we can use the API key of the React Native project. Just copy the key, the whole DSN URL, and paste it in the all three fields. And click on save. And we are done with the configuration of our Sentry application. So in this video, we'll talk about Cloudinary. Cloudinary is a cloud-based platform that allows users to upload different media files, including images, videos, or documents. We use Cloudinary in our application to upload logos, images, profile images, and media types like this. So just stick with me, and in the next part, we'll try to configure Cloudinary for our application. Now in this video, we'll try to configure the Cloudinary, and just click on the get started. You can use any method you want to log in. We'll use the Google. Select any email you want, click on continue. We'll use this Cloudinary tool to upload different media files like images, videos, or any other PDF or document. Just wait a couple of seconds, it will configure the account. You can skip the questionnaire. You can skip the questionnaire. So now our account is actually set up. Let's select the correct environment. Let's go to the media library. Go to the upload inside the preferences. Here you can see that we have metadata on upload is checked. Go back to the media library again. This is where you can see all of the medias as samples, and you can also upload any other file manually. Go to the settings. Go to the upload. Let's edit the preset. It must be unsigned, and save. Now this preset has been set to unsigned, and this is the default, so we'll be using it in our application. We have multiple configuration over here. You can play with them if you want. Just save your configuration. You can see that we have the ml underscore default as our preset, and this is the name of the preset. Just make sure you save it somewhere, and also the environment ID. So we have done everything over here in the account. Now let's go back to the admin portal and go to the configuration, and in the Cloudinary section we need to update all the information. Now this is the URL. We actually need to update it. Okay, so before pasting it, we'll update the URL first. Let's go back to the notepad again, and let's copy the environment ID and paste it in the environment name. Yes, just remove the environment name placeholder and paste it over there. Now just copy the URL and paste it in the configuration. Now go back again. This is the preset is actually the key, so just copy the preset name and paste it in the Cloudinary key and click on save, and this will update your configuration with the updated Cloudinary configurations. So in this video, we'll talk about Amplitude, which is another tool that we are using in our application. This tool is actually used to analyze the visitors' data behavior. This software enables different businesses to understand their customers better. It gives you different dashboards regarding the user session, for example, where the user is actually residing when the application is being used, what platform is using, or what kind of operating system is using, or what kind of system is using, whether using Mac OS or Windows or and stuff like this. And this tool provides multiple dashboards for you to learn the data and understand your client better. So just stick with me, and in the next part we'll try to configure Amplitude in our application. So now let's start with the Amplitude. So in this video we'll set up the Amplitude, which is used for product analytics and event tracking. We'll have different dashboards. So let's start by first setting up the account. Click on the login. You have different ways to log in. You can either use Google sign in or use a custom email. Once you click on that, you will receive a confirmation email. Just go to the email and confirm the login. Once you click on the link, it will redirect you back to the dashboard, and here you can set up a new app. So by default it gives you an app, and you have to keep track of these different informations and links. Just follow up the instructions, and you can set up the Amplitude in your application. But for safety purpose, we'll save all those scripts and keys in our notepad. So the first thing we did was copied the above script, and the second one is going to be copying the API, and we will do the same thing for both web application and mobile app. Now let's go to the React Native and do the same thing for our mobile app. You can see we have the same UI. Here we have the key. Just copy the key and save in your notepad. Now the next step is going to be using these scripts and these keys in our application. Once you have these keys and your setup, you set up your both web application and mobile apps, you are good to go. So we'll first start with the admin portal. So click on the admin and then go to the public and open up the index.html. Here you will have multiple scripts. You can add your script somewhere in between them. If you have a similar script of Amplitude, you can just remove that. and then copy the latest one that we just created from the dashboard of the Amplitude, and then do the same thing for the web portal as well. Open up the index, remove any old Amplitude scripts and replace it with the same web script. So for the web admin and for the web customer, we'll be using the same script. Now open up your admin configuration section, scroll down a little bit, and here you'll find the Amplitude API key. So we already have both the keys for the web and the mobile apps. You can just copy the keys, go back to the configuration, paste it over here, and do the same thing for the mobile app. Just copy the key and paste it in the Amplitude API key for the mobile app, and click on save, and here we are, our Amplitude has been set up. Now let's talk about some activities in the Amplitude. Once you set up both the mobile apps, you will have these activities logged in the dashboard. You can check them out. So it's about the user session, and also tells you different information like the country and the platform for iOS. So when we receive an event for the platform iOS, that means that we're receiving event from our React Native mobile apps. And then you have different dashboards here. You can create multiple plots over here. Depending upon your requirement, you are more than welcome to play with them. But for our application, you don't need to do anything other than the user lookup and session dashboard. Then we have the React Native. Once you are in the React Native, just click on the next. You can do the same thing, do the same setup. You can also create a new React Native app, but we have already done that. So you can see that the application is actually listening for new events. And once there is any event received, you can see that the listening text has been changed to data received, and this will happen for all the applications you create. So just make sure that you verify them. And then again, we have different dashboards, different plots over here. The default one is user activity, and this is what we need in the application. But as I said, you are more than welcome to create your own plots and dashboards. And you can save the dashboard, give it a name, and now you have a dashboard for the mobile app, and you will receive all the activities and all the events received from the mobile apps, so both customer, rider, and your delivery app. So you can just play around and check out your data. So in this video, we'll talk about Firebase. Firebase is another service provided by Google. Firebase provides different tools like real-time databases, cloud messaging, data storage to store media files, but mainly we'll be using the Firebase for our notifications. We are using different notifications in our mobile app, in our web app, and we will be using Firebase for that. So in Firebase, we'll create multiple applications for our web apps and for our mobile apps as well. So this video could be pretty long, so just stay with me, and in the next part we'll try to configure Firebase and different applications for our web app and for our mobile apps. In this part, we'll talk about setting up the Firebase account. So I'll just create a new project, give it any custom name you want, click continue. Just make sure you don't uncheck this and click on create project. Just wait a couple of seconds and we are done with the project creation. Alright, once you're done, you can register an app. So just give it any name, let's say web app. We do not need any Firebase hosting, so I'll just click on continue. And then continue to the console. Now you have different features over here. that you can use in the Firebase. Now go to the web app that we created, click on the settings, scroll down, and this is where you'll find all the keys for the auth domain and the credentials that are required. So just copy all of these. This is for the web app. So let's open up the web app, go to the source, and then we'll have a firebase.js file. Just copy and paste the whole content. In the same way, let's go to the admin source folder, and again we have firebase.js file. You can either paste the same content over here or create a different app for the admin as well. So I'll leave that to you guys. You can either paste or use the same Firebase application, the web app, or you can create a different one for the admin. Now let's go to the admin portal and open up the configuration. Now here we have all the information: the API key, auth domain, project ID, the storage bucket, messaging, sender ID, app ID, and measurement ID. So we'll update the configuration. Just copy and paste all of the details over here. These keys are really important, so just make sure that you do not miss any part of the key. Update the auth domain. Do the same thing for the project ID. Just make sure you do not include the double quotations at the end of each key. Copy the storage bucket ID as well and paste it in the configuration. The last one is the measurement ID. I would like to add a comment over here. So in the beginning, when we are creating the application, I asked you guys not to uncheck the particular switch box at the bottom left. That is really important. If you uncheck that part, the configuration will not have any measurement ID. So just make sure that you do not uncheck that part. That was a mistake from our development point of view. From development side, we missed that. So just make sure you do not uncheck it. Just copy and paste the measurement ID and click the save, and your Firebase configurations are done. In this part, we'll start by deploying our web portal. So let's start with the new project. We'll create a new project by importing our code from the GitHub. Just make sure Netlify is authorized to use GitHub. We'll select the Enatega organization, select our repo, and then food delivery. You can enter any site name that you want. We'll start by admin dashboard -demo. Just make sure it's available. If it's not, then you will have to do some kind of modifications in the name. Then you can select the branch you want to use for the deployment. You can use any custom branch, and then the base directory where your code exists. Since I have multiple projects, I need to specify the project. So I'm deploying the web, I'm deploying the admin, so I have to select the admin directory. And for the web, you just need to change the admin to the web. Enter the build command, which is npm run build. And the published directory would be a subdirectory inside the admin directory, which is going to be the build. Just make sure everything is correct. If you want to enter any environment variables, you're more than welcome to do. Just click on deploy and this will start deploying your admin portal. Just wait a couple of minutes. It may take time depending upon your internet speed or your package of Netlify. You can see the log over here. Okay, so our app has been deployed successfully. Now click on the open production deploy and this will open up your admin portal. Click on login and this will log into your application. Now we are using the backend URL in the deployment, that's why it's working fine. In the production you cannot use local backend URL, you must change it to the production URL. Now let's move on to the customer web setup. We're already done with the admin portal. Now let's move on to the customer. This is for the local. Let's start by first updating the backend URL. Since we're setting it up in the local, let's use the local backend URL. Let's go to the configuration, constant.js. The above two URLs are the backend URLs. We can just comment this part and we still have two extra environment variables that we can use. Just uncomment these and change the private address. Just make sure that the IP address matches with your system's private address. Or once you're done, you can just copy the Google Maps key. Now at this point we do not need to hard code it because we have already updated the configuration in the admin portal, but still you can do it if you want, but it's not necessary since the admin configuration is already up to date with the latest Google Maps API. Go to the terminal. Now let's start by first installing all the important packages by typing npm I as short for npm install. Just wait a couple of seconds and the npm will install all the necessary packages. The backend API is also up and running. Once all the packages are installed, just go back to any previous project created in the Firebase or create a new one. Switch to the cloud messaging tab and then scroll down in the web push certificates and generate a key pair. Just copy the key. Okay, once you copied the webpack key, just come back to the admin portal and click on the configuration portion and then get down to the Firebase admin portion. This is where we'll add the webpack key. Just copy your webpack key and paste it over here. So I'll just paste my webpack key over here and then click on save, just like we saved the other parts of the Firebase configuration. Once you're done, just click on refresh and make sure the Firebase admin configuration has been updated. You can come down here and see that the webpack key has been updated. Now let's go back again and this time we'll start the web portal. So just type npm run start and this will start the customer web portal for you. Just wait for a couple of seconds. So the application is started to load and we can see that we are in our customer web portal. Just allow the Google Maps location permission and now you can search for any location and they should work fine if the Google Maps is working correctly. Click on the find restaurants and you should receive something. Now since we do not have anything in our database, that's why we're receiving no restaurants. Now let's talk about customer web deployments. In the previous part, we talked about deploying the admin portal. Now this time we'll do the same thing for the customer. The rest of the process is same. Just log into the Netlify. Add a new site, import an existing project from the GitHub, or if your code is deployed in any other platform, you are more than welcome to use it. Click on the GitHub. And then change your organization. Search for the correct repo. We'll be using the same repo but with different directory this time. Food delivery multi-vendor is selected. This is a public repo. Give it a site name. Check for the availability. Okay, this time this site name is available. We can come down and select the correct branch. Select the production demo branch. Now this time we'll be giving a base directory of the web portal instead of admin portal. Now add the build command, which is same as the admin portal, which is npm run build. The publish directory is also set up. Just add the publish build subdirectory, and the build code will be added to the build directory, and then just deploy your app. Again, just wait a couple of minutes. Once the app is deployed, you can see your build project as well. You can go to the site configuration and check out different information. Just click on continuous deployment, and you should see all of your information over here: the base directory, the build command, the build status, and the log status, whether the logs are being created or not. And then just click on the link and you will be redirected to the customer web portal. Just allow the location, and this time we have something in the database, in the production database. So once we search for something, we should receive at least 1 or 2 restaurants. Just find restaurant, and you can see that we have at least 1 restaurant. So it means that our backend is working, our database is working, and our frontend is also working. Then let's move to the customer app deployment. So let's open the Enatega Multivendor app. This is the delivery app for the customers. Go to the package.json and remove the offline tag. Go to the environment.js. And this is for the production, and this part is for the local. Just update the URLs to the local URLs. Make sure the IP address matches with your private IP address. Just copy the backend IP. I think they both are the same. Make sure you change the IP address in all the 3 links. The rest of the configuration will be fetched from the admin, which will be updated in the previous videos. We've already added the Google API key, so we are not required to hardcode the key, and the same goes for the Amplitude and the rest of the API keys. We can change the directory to the Enatega Multivendor app. Let's start by first installing all the required dependencies. Once all of the dependencies are installed, we need to set up the development application. Just go to the ES.json and make sure you have the development channel and go to the app.json and just change the version. If we have the same, if we have any development build with the same version, then you will go to the edit part, but since we want a new build from the scratch, we'll just change the version. Just make sure you change the version in both the attributes. Now let's first create an Expo account. Alright, so before proceeding, we'll be using three different services in this part, including Expo, Firebase, and Google. We'll be using Expo to store our projects, and we'll use the same Expo account to generate different builds of our Android and iOS application. Next, we'll move to the Firebase and create different Google service accounts, so our applications can communicate with different Google services, Firebase services like notifications. And in the last part, we'll move to the Google console, where we will create different auth client IDs, so our Android and iOS applications can use the Google sign-in. So just stay with me, and in the next part, we'll configure all these three portions. Let's go to the expo.dev. This sign up if you do not have an Expo account, or if you have an Expo account, you can just log in. Since I do not have an account, I'll just create a new one from the scratch. Give it any valid username. Just give it any simple password that you can remember. Just agree all the terms of services and click on sign up, and this will set up your Expo account. And this is important step, because without Expo will not be able to create any builds. Now the next step is to create a new project. Give it a display name. Let's start with the test customer app, because we are dealing with the customer app, but you're more than welcome to name it anything you want. Just click on OK, and you have these commands. You can either use them or you can ignore them for the time being. Now your app has been set up. So you have the owner name, the slug, and the ID, and you have to make sure that you remember them, or if they are persistent in the Expo, then you're good to go. Just go to the multi-vendor app again, go to the app.json, and here you have the owner. Just replace the owner with the correct owner. Go back to the Expo, copy the slug, now copy the app ID. Just scroll down a little bit and you should have the project ID here inside the EAS attribute. Just copy the actual ID and replace it with the old one. Just make sure you place it everywhere, because there are multiple places where you will find this ID. Just make sure everything is correct. Here we have the bundle identifier. Let's change it to something else. Let's change it to com.customer.app. And this is important step, so just make sure that you follow every step exactly the way I'm doing. Yeah, so we have the package name in two places. Just make sure that you replace both of them. Now the next step is the Google Maps API key. Just replace it with the API key that we generated in the previous videos. We can get it from the admin, or if you want, you can create a new Google Maps API for this application. Just make sure you do not push app.json to the GitHub, or even if you are pushing, just make sure that you remove these API keys so you do not expose these sensitive data points. Just replace the Android collapsed title as well with your custom title. Let's make it test. We have this name in two places, you just replace it in all the places. Just go through all the contents of the file and make sure everything is intact. Everything seems fine to me. Now let's go back to the Firebase again, and this time we'll create another project. You can use the same project again or create a new one with the test app. Do not uncheck this part again. I repeat, do not uncheck this part. Just click on continue. We'll just wait a couple of minutes and the Firebase will create a new project for us. We need this Google service.json file. So the project is created. Now let's continue. Now let's start by first creating a Firebase app for Apple app. Let's change the package name to the com.customer.app, just like we did in our app code. Let's give it a nickname to the app. This is optional, and click on continue. Just click on next and next and next. Now go to the console. Just refresh the page. Now you can see we have a customer app. Let's go to add app, and this time we'll create another app for our Android app. Give it the same package name, com.customer.app. Also you can give it a custom nickname. For the timing we'll ignore the SSH, but let's go. Yes, for the timing we'll ignore it because this is an optional part. Let's just register the app again. Again, just click on the next and continue to console. Now we have the customer app. Go to the settings, and then you can scroll down and you should have Google service.json. Just download the file. Open up the directory. Now go back to your multi-vendor app and paste that file over here. You should have a copy, so just delete the old one, which is Google service.json, or you can just copy the content of the copy file to the original file. Let's talk about Google services.json. Again, this file can be obtained when you are creating a Firebase project and also creating multiple apps, Firebase apps for your different mobile apps. So first, in the first section, we have like the project information, including the project number, the Firebase URL of our project, and then the project identifier, and also the link to our storage bucket, right? And then we have, since we have three different clients, the restaurant, the customer, and the rider, we have three different client information. So if we just open one of them, we have again some other attributes and information about that particular client. Like inside the client info, we have like the identifier for the mobile app, right? And then inside that we have the, since this is for the Android, we have the package name of the Android inside the Android client. And in the same way we have an iOS, so we will have an iOS section over here as well. And then we have the auth client ID, which is actually an identifier that is used during the auth authentication, and the actual API key that is used by the Firebase to authenticate the client. And in the services section, we have another attribute, which is like app invite service. This is when you actually invite other applications, when you actually allow other people to use your applications in different platforms. So then you will have some different objects over here representing different clients. And inside that we have also a client for the iOS. So you can see that we have the ISO and then the bundle ID as well. So in the same way, we can have, this can vary depending upon the services that you have subscribed to in the Firebase. But the most important things are the obviously the project information, and then the basic client information, and also the key. These are the most important configuration that are actually used by our mobile app to communicate with the Firebase and use different services, and also authenticate during those services. And this time we'll update the Google service account. So let's go back to the Firebase. In the project setting, we can just go to the service accounts. And then you can see on the left side we have three service accounts. So just click on generate new private key. Just make sure you do not push it to any public repository. Click on generate key, and this will download a new file with all the required credentials. Just paste the file in your multi-vendor app. And then copy all the contents. Go back to the Google service account of your multi-vendor app and paste it over here. So the Google service account is actually a complete JSON with multiple attributes. This is obtained when you create an application in the Firebase project. So there are multiple attributes. The first one is the type. This is what represents the type of your service account, of your Firebase account, sorry, the application or the project that you created. So we are actually using the service account, so the type would be service account. Then we have the project identifier as a project ID. The private key ID is actually used to sign the tokens, right? The private key itself is a private key that is used to authenticate and sign the request. Then we have the client email associated with the service account, and then the client ID as an identifier of the service account. And then the auth URL is actually an authentication endpoint used by Firebase, and the token URL is actually used by Firebase to obtain new tokens. Then we have two different certificate URLs. Both of them are used as authentication. So the first auth provided certificate URL is actually used to for the auth authentication, and the client cert URL is actually used by Google to identify the service account that is being used, or the identify the identity of the service account that is being used. And then go back to the eas.json file and make sure you have the production channel setup for Android, where the build type should be APK. And then open up the terminal. And this time we'll type EAS login to log into the Expo. Type the username or the email address, and then the password you used while signing up the account. You can see the prompt over here which says logged in. So you have been logged into the Expo account successfully. go back to the general tab and we'll create a Google service account again. But before that, let's just type es build, and this will start building the production app. Just make sure that you type the command correctly. So the command is es build colon configure, and then just enter and select all, and then type another command which says es build, and then the profile, uh, the platform is going to be Android and the profile is going to be production. The names should be same, otherwise the build will fail. Just press enter, and this will start building a new APK for our Android. Now it's uploading to the es build. If you're using the free version, then it may push our release to the queue. Just open up the Expo, and on the left side you'll have the builds option. You can see that we have a production build in progress. We're using the free tier queue, so the status is queued because there are other people who are also using the same version, the free version of the Expo. Now open up the restaurant app and go back to the app.json again. Now do the same changes again. For the name for Slug, you can create a new app in the Expo, just like we did for the customer. You can just create a new project for the rider and for the restaurant, and you can just follow up the process and you should be good to go with the production app. Now go back to the Firebase again, open up the project test app, and we have the customer app as an Android app, and we have an Apple app as a customer app as well. Make sure that the bundle ID is same for both, so it should be com.customer.app. So this is the bundle identifier in the restaurant. Currently we are in the restaurant. Make sure that you update these as well. Create a new app, and then you can have a new bundle identifier as com.restaurant.app. Do the same thing for restaurant and for the rider as well. We can see that the build is in progress. Now at the bottom we have add fingerprint, and we have to add these fingerprints. Take these fingerprints from the Expo and then add one in the Firebase and the second one in the Google console when we create our OAuth client IDs. Let's go to the Expo and open up our test customer app. So for some reason our production build failed, and then I rebuilt it again, and now we can see that we have a success status. Just come to the overview and refresh the page and you should receive a successful build. Now at the sidebar, you can just come and enter in the credentials. You can see that we have an application identified as com.customer.app. Just click on it and you should have two fingerprints over here. The first one is SHA-1 and the second one is SHA-256. One of them will be used in the Google console and the second one will be used in the Firebase. So just copy the SHA-256. In the test app, click on the customer app and add the SHA-256 hash over here in the fingerprint. Just copy paste it and then click on save. Make sure you create different apps for different applications, for admin web, for customer web, for restaurant, and for rider, and for the delivery app as well. And then copy the SHA-1 hash, and we will use the SHA-1 hash in the Google console. Let's go to the Google console and create a new project over here. Click on the side menu, API services, and go to credentials. So first we will actually complete the consent screen. Click create credentials and then go to OAuth client ID. Just click on configure consent screen. Select external option and click on create. Give it a name which is a required field. Let's just give it test app and then select the support email. App logo is not necessary, you can just ignore it. Ignore the app domain input fields as well. Just add a developer contact information. You can just type any email you want. Click on save and continue. Currently we are in the scopes and we do not need to add any kind of scope, so we can just ignore it and save and continue. We know we don't need any users as well. Just click on save and continue and click on back to the dashboard. So we are done with the consent screen. Now we can go back again to the credentials and create credentials for the web, Android, iOS, and the Expo. So I'll start with the web, which will be used in both the admin and the customer portal. Alright, now enter all the JavaScript origins and also the redirect URLs. Since we'll be using the same OAuth client IDs on both production and local, we have to put both the URLs. So we know that the local is running on the localhost port 3000. Add it in the authorized redirect URLs as well. Now you can add the second URL, which should be the production URL. Now do the same thing for the authorized redirect URLs as well. Here the example app.com can represent the domain of the Netlify app. Click on create. And this will give you the client ID for the web. Now let's follow the same process for the Android, iOS, and for the Expo as well. So let's go back to the OAuth client ID and create another client ID for the Android. The package name must match with the package name in the application. So for the multi-vendor app, it was com.customer.app. Now copy the SHA-1 fingerprint and paste it over here. Now we have the client ID for the Android. Now let's create another client ID for the iOS. Go back to the app.json and we should have in the iOS attribute we should have a bundle identifier. Just copy it and paste it over here. This should be same as well. Now click on create and this will create another client ID for the iOS application. Now let's create the final client ID for the Expo. We can go back again to the OAuth client ID, select a web application and type any name. Let's type Expo proxy, add a URL over here. Just type https auth.expo.io. Now add the same URL in the authorized redirect URL section. Just make sure that you append the owner name. So the owner name is Kashif Dev. Just copy it and append it to your URL. And then the slug of your application. Now we have the OAuth client ID for the Expo as well. So we have created all the 4 IDs and we can update our admin portal. So just go to the configuration in the admin portal and update all of these keys in the Google credentials section. Just copy the client ID for the web and go to the client Google client IDs and paste it over there. Do it for the Android as well. Just copy the ID and paste it in the Android client ID. Now we do the same thing for the iOS. And the last one is going to be the Expo. Just copy the client ID for the Expo and paste it in the Expo client ID. Once done, just click on the save and this will update the configuration. Okay, now let's go back to the Firebase account again, and this time you can see that I have created another app for the restaurant. I have an Apple app for the customer as well, and then I have 2 different web apps for the admin app and for the web app. Just create these 2 as well, and then download your Google service.json file. And go back to your multi-vendor app and update your Google JSON file. You can see that we have both the clients over here, the customer and the restaurant. So when you create the apps and download the Google JSON file, that JSON file will be collective and will have both the client's details, the customer app and the restaurant app. And you can create another app like for rider, and then once you create the app and download it that will also be included in the Google JSON file. So copy the URI of the iOS and paste it in the app.json. Find the CF bundle schemes URL scheme and paste it over here. Make sure all of the details are correct, like the slug, the owner name, the versions, the bundle identifier for both iOS and Android. For Android, it's going to be the package name. The package name for Android is also correct. And we can see that the Google JSON file is also fine. Now let's go to the EAS JSON and we can see that we have in the development channel we have the iOS simulator setup in order to run this application in the simulator for iOS. So let's clear the screen and type EAS build :configure. Let's configure for all and then type EAS build -- platform is going to be the development, the iOS, sorry, and then the profile is going to be, or the channel is going to be, development. We are doing this to run our application in the development mode. In the previous section we did it for the production and generated a new APK, and this time we are doing it for the development. The rest of the process is same as production. It will be added to the queue in the Expo, and once it's done you can download the APK and install it. Just refresh the page and you can see that the iOS simulator build is in progress. Now let's move forward to the restaurant app setup. In order to generate the production APK, you can follow the same steps that we performed in the customer app. But for the development, it's pretty simple. We can just go to the package.json, just remove the offline flag, go to the environment.js and add the local URL of the backend in the GraphQL and in the VS GraphQL, and just make sure that the private IP address is correct, and this should match with your system's private IP address. I will repeat it again that we are doing it for locally, for development, for the local setup. If you want to generate a production build, you can follow the same steps that were performed in the customer app. Create a new Expo account and just update the EAS.json file, app.json file, and you're good to go. Then install the packages by using npmi. Once you're done with that, you can just run the command npm run start. Just make sure that you change the channel attribute to the channel instead of release channel, and then we'll be using Expo. So make sure that using Expo is selected, and then press I to open up the iOS simulator, or press A if you have Android simulator. So currently I'm running the screen recorder and multiple applications, and I'm doing multiple activities, so the build may take some time, so I'll just stop the recording over here and then we'll come back when the build is successful. So we can see that the build is in progress. It's at 70% right now. Once it reaches 100%, the app will start in the iOS simulator. So the bundle is complete. Just wait a couple of seconds and just make sure your phone is unlocked. If it's not, then the app uh, will not show. So we can see that the build is complete. Now we can just come to the iOS simulator. I think it's locked, so we can just unlock the phone and we should be able to see the restaurant app up and running. We can see that. Now let's move forward and do the same process for the rider app as well and run it locally. All these steps will be same. Let's just go to the rider folder and go to the package.json and remove the offline flag. Then we'll go to the environment.js file and update the URLs, and but before that just make sure that you change the attribute to the channel, and then update the backend URLs since we are running it locally, but you are more than welcome to use the production URLs as well. The IP address is still the same, so I'll just use the same IP address in both the GraphQL URL and the VS GraphQL URL. Make sure you remove the S, which is for the secure server, and since we are using locally, we do not need any secure server. We can see that the Google Maps is being used in the environment.js, and we did not need to hardcode it over here because in the admin portal section we actually updated the configuration and also updated and added the new Google Maps API. So we once we start the app, the configuration will be fetched from the database and we'll use that, and then we can access all of the configurations using the configuration object. So let's just go back. Let's type npm-i to install all the dependencies and make sure that you are in the correct directory. Currently we're in the restaurant, so let's switch to the rider directory and then clear the screen and then type npm install to install all the necessary dependencies. Once all the packages are installed, we can just type npm run start and this will start our server. Now we can just switch back to the Expo. We do not need to run the development build. So just press S to switch to the Expo Go, and then press A to open up the APK on the Android, or press I to open up the iOS simulator. So just need to wait a couple of minutes over here and then the app will start in the simulator. I'll stop the recording here again. So you can see that the build has completed, and we can see that we have the sign in and the login page. So now you can just go back to the admin, create a new rider, and you should be able to sign in successfully. For both restaurants and rider, you can use the admin portal to create new restaurants, and also you can create new riders to log in. So this was the whole tutorial about how to set up the whole Enatega application, including the backend, the front end, and also the mobile applications. So we started with the backend API. We first set up it in the local environment, right? And then we moved to deploy it on the railway application, and then we moved to the admin portal and set it up in locally and then how it actually looks like. And then in the next step we moved towards generating different keys, and we generated multiple keys, and that was one of the most important steps. Once we generated those keys, we actually added them to the configuration section in the admin portal. Just make sure that if somehow I missed a particular key, like I generated the key but I forgot to add it to the admin portal, just make sure you do it, right? Whether it's Amplitude key or Twillio or Sentry or any key that I've generated or used in the Enatega, just make sure that once you generate those keys, you have to update the configuration in the admin portal. And then we move to the deployment of the admin portal on the Netlify. So the deployment part was same for both customer portal and admin portal, right? After deploying the admin portal, we move towards the customer portal and we ran the portal locally, right? And we saw it was running perfectly fine with the local backend API. And in the final step, we move towards working with the mobile applications. So first we created an Expo account, right? And then after getting some little information about like who the owner is and the slug of the application that we created for the customer app or the delivery app, right? We used those credentials and updated our customer delivery app, right? And then the next step, we created some client IDs, right? And then once we created those IDs, we updated the configuration in the admin portal, right? And in the final step, we created a production build for the delivery app, or also known as customer app. And in the next step, we set up the restaurant app locally. We saw how to run and set up the local environment for the restaurant app, and we ran the application on the simulator. And we did the same thing for the rider app as well. So this was the whole workflow and the steps that we took to set up the whole Enatega application. So this was from the team side. And in case you guys face any difficulties or any issue, you guys are more than welcome to contact the development team, and we will be more than happy to support you guys in